Hi, everyone. Dr. Eric Westman here. And as you know, from time to time, I get to meet the movers and shakers in the keto, low carb universe that I've been able to meet through the years and bring them to you with interviews. Here, it's my great pleasure to introduce Catherine Seo. How are you doing?
I'm well, thank you. So wonderful to be here with you, Dr. Westman.
Well, so there are a lot of people who don't know who you are and what you do. And so how would you introduce yourself, where you're from, why you're in this space?
I come to keto from the back door, like some other people as well. I have and work with a community with a somewhat little known fat and lymphatic disorder called lipedema. Lipedema, though primarily looked at as a fat disorder because it includes adiposity or fat tissue and metabolism, it also very much involves the lymphatic system, which has a whole other thing to it, which adds to swelling and pain and bruising and a very particular pathology. And so I found out that I had it. Well, I had something. Nobody knew what I had. So after quite a bit of research and a lot of really delving into some of the literature, I found lipedema and it found me. And what happened is very slowly, and maybe not so slowly, I developed a community because we needed help and we helped one another, which I think is the beauty of the internet. I think the beauty of our technology is it can bring some of us together where we can say, you too, me too. Oh my God, how can we know this? Which is what happened with keto.
I thought I was the only one, right?
Right.
So how was it initially diagnosed? And I think this is pretty common today that people have to do a little research on their own. Doctors aren't really in tune to lipedema.
No, not at all. So I'm happy to say that we've put out a lot of material. We've a lot of ebooks, a lot of webinars, a lot of outreach because we want to reach women. There are as many as 17 million women in the U.S. that have it. And what happens is it's misdiagnosed as obesity or some form of an eating disorder. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't include that because it can, but it's not the primary driver. The primary driver is the disease process itself that affects, as I said, the lymph system, the adipose system, the vascular system, the whole shebang. And as I've worked with it, well, one of the things that's very much a part of the symptoms of this particular disorder is disproportionate fat distribution. So the upper body can be fairly normal, while the lower body and the arms can be very exaggerated.
So if you look in the mirror and you see a difference of the amount, your size, which based on fat distribution, that's one sign that you might have lymphedema.
Yeah, lipedema. And because lipedema is symmetrical, lymphedema tends to be asymmetrical, though not always, and is much more about the swelling or the holding of the lymphatic fluid in the interstitium, which is the space between the muscle and the skin. But, through all of that, diet and exercise doesn't work. What do I mean when I say that? I mean that people can diet and do low-cal restriction and I mean, women will say, I've done everything right, and nothing works. Even bariatric surgery. You know, women have come into the community who have had RNY or full gastric bypass, and they lose some weight, but doesn't change their shape. And, you know, basically, it doesn't respond well to anything except keto.
There's a new paper, an old concept, a new paper, and Gary Taubes is one of the authors on it, and they describe fat trapping disease, or fat trapping, meaning fat goes in and you can't get it out. Like there's one valve. When you don't have lipedema, basically it's insulin that the carbs raise the insulin. Insulin keeps the fat locked in. You have to imagine that there's something at a biologic level that makes it harder to draw upon. Maybe it's describe how would, if someone was feeling their own thigh, for example. I've felt some people where they have a nodularity to the fat. Is that pretty common? Can you tell by just the texture of your leg?
Yeah, if you feel your arms, I'm feeling my arm. Feel your arms or your thigh, and fat is mushy. I mean, regular white fat is mushy and soft. Yeah, and it kind of, it's soft. But not so with lipedema. Lipedema fat is actually, like you say, nodular. It's like feeling beans in a bag. Like just like kidney beans. Like you can feel their boundaries because of fibrotic tissue. Part of the issue is fibrotic tissue, is scar tissue that heals over and creates boundary of sorts. And that's what happens in lipedema. Why? They don't know. And I think having dealt with obesity, as I know you have for so many years, there's so much bias and stigma attached to weight. And those of us who have lived with it know it well, and those who've treated it see it. I mean, I know that it's part of our culture. It's part of our way of defining the world. And for whatever reason, fat is one of the last discrimination that has collusion, that it's okay to think poorly of someone who carries extra fat because it's obviously something they're doing. It's obviously they're up in the middle of the night eating boxes of cookies and ice cream. Or they're lazy.
I just have to explain that you're using New York sarcasm, big city sarcasm, just because and I've learned that in a doctor's office, sarcasm doesn't go well. Oh no, just kidding. But yeah, that is the stories I hear from people about how the other doctors even behave and to have bias against people affected by obesity. It's not right. And when I back to if one of my patients or one of our members, those who are watching, trying to figure out if they have lipedema, this can start when you're young.
It mostly starts at puberty. What we do know some about it as a disease entity. It gets initiated or exacerbates with hormonal dysfunction. It's mostly women. Very, very few men. There are some, and there are men who have hormonal dysregulation.
Interesting.
Who are maybe estrogen dominant and lacking in testosterone, which, it's rare, but it still happens. For women, it's the disruption of estrogen and the hormones themselves, so that at puberty, you might find that, you start to notice that your legs are so disproportionate. It can
legs get bigger
and column-like.
People have even told me that it just feels heavier.
Yeah,
I mean, they can just tell. And then is it a slow progression then, or can it, take a year or years?
It's so fascinating because it's almost like everyone has a different story, and it has different progressions in terms of timing, in terms of triggers, in terms of, there are some of us, me being one of them, that food was an issue. So I have I have an eating disorder because when I was young, I was a binge eater. So, I grew out of it. I worked hard to grow out of it and have been in Overeaters Anonymous for over 35 years. So, that's part of it, but it's not the core of it. And I want your members to know the one thing that is so clear is it's not your fault. And that's the hardest thing. When I first realized that I was dealing with a disease entity, and I'm like, oh, you mean it's not my fault? I thought it was my fault. I was certain it was my fault. I blamed myself for my entire life.
Well, and everyone probably told them, though.
Yeah.
Everyone told you it was your fault. So
yeah. And to go back to the New York sarcasm, the literature talks about controllability. That's the research phrase that they use. That there is the misnomer that weight is controllable. We know that it isn't. We've proved it again and again. Obesity medicine has been very clear that there's genetic factors, there's metabolic factors, there's so many different contributors to it. And yet, I'll tell you, I've been in this field for a very long time. I've lived it for my entire life. I still don't really believe it. I still think I'm doing something. It's so inculcated in us. And I'm laughing because it's much easier than it ever used to be. And then, as I said, nothing worked. And then we found keto. I met Leslyn Keith, who I know you know because you guys worked together many years ago and still stay in touch. Yeah. She's absolutely wonderful. She was doing research on a ketogenic way of eating for lymphedema. And we met at the National Institutes of Health. NIH in 2015 had the first ever conference on the lymphatic system. So get this still blows me away. The lymphatic system is one of the most important systems in our body because it is the immune system and it deals with regulation and the regulation and balance of fluid in the body. They don't teach it in medical school.
Yeah.
No doctors know about it. The doctors that know about it, bless, the primary care said to me, listen, in my entire practice, I have 2 women who have lymphedema because they have breast cancer. That's it. And so there's such limitation to it. And yet it's one of the most important systems in the body.
It's one of those things like you don't know what you got till it's gone. It does all this work behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. No one sticks up for the lymphatics in the medical world. Immunologists, infectious disease, people kind of look at it as the place where the white blood cells will go around. And if you have a lymph node enlargement from a sore throat, that's the lymphatics. That's, so, okay, an ENT doctor will see if you have swollen glands, the term for that's the lymph system. Yeah. But the GI tract is using the lymph system when it even absorbs food. And so there's no surgical specialty for it or medical subset of medical world for it. It really kind of crosses so many boundaries. But I guess as you're saying that it's a doctor in a practice won't see it very often. So again, it doesn't rise up as an issue over and over. It's great the NIH finally came up with maybe some topics and things and maybe money to study it. So how did you, from your own experience, then extrapolate or want to do more to bring other people in? How did that happen?
Oh, oh my God, it was such a journey. I started.
I think it's important. I think it's important for people to hear.
Yeah.
How things progress. People are changing and wanting to replicate things all the time.
Yeah, it's that place that you said. I thought it was only me. I mean, I thought I was the only one on the planet that had these particular array of disorders, and then you start to hear about others. And someone invited me to the UK. They were gathering. There was a group of 50 women gathering in Birmingham in the UK. And someone invited me, and I said, I can remember walking. At the time, I was walking with a friend a lot. And I remember saying, I can't go to England for the weekend. That's insane. And she said to me, you have to go. It's the only place you can find what you're looking for. So I went to England for the weekend, and I met the group of women there. And it was like walking into a room where everyone understood and everyone had similar symptoms and similar experiences. And so one thing led to another. And at the time, I have a background in media. My advanced degree is in media psychology. And so I thought, well, if I'm going to England for the weekend, I'm going to make it worthwhile. I think I'll bring my camera and I'll make a documentary film. So that's what I did. I was like, I started to interview everyone, because basically what's research? Research is asking and listening, and then looking at all the data and seeing what's common and what can we extrapolate? What can we learn from the experience of X number of people? Like, my favorite is the ACE study, because they had, it was run through the CDC. They had 17,000 people that they used in their base study. We had 50, but you can learn from everyone. So that's what happened. And one thing led to another. And I feel like we grew together as a community, which is what I feel about the keto community too. And my involvement in keto, it's like when you look at keto and you look at the food pyramid and you look at, I grew up thinking, I remember when I went lower carb, not low carb, but lower carb, wondering if my hair was going to fall out and my fingernails were going to drop off, because carbohydrates were so important.
Right.
At the time, it was in the 80s. Nobody was questioning anything back then. And of course, I'm Italian. Give me a loaf of Italian bread and pasta and I'm happy. So, it's like really understanding and what we found out. So I'm going to circle back, because I met Leslyn at NIH, and we started to communicate. When I saw her research, I went, oh my goodness. So we started to communicate and work together. And the thing about it is carbohydrates are inflammatory. More's the pity, but they are very inflammatory. And if you have lipedema, there's a difference. I mean, you can feel the pain scale increase within hours of eating carbs. Mm. And so Leslie and I started to work together. We sort of said to the community we had at the time, because it's going back to probably 2016, we think this is something interesting. You want to come? Okay, come on and play. We don't know. We're going to give it a try. Well, the results were remarkable because nothing had done anything for many of the women, and many of the women started to experience a decrease in pain, a diminishment in swelling, and a reduction in volume. Now, it doesn't work for everyone, and it doesn't work forever for everyone. A number of us, including me, tried carnivore. Some have lasted very long on carnivore. I lasted long enough on carnivore to see some differences. Okay. I find personally, I find vegetables delightful. So it's hard for me to be without vegetables, but carnivore has worked for many. So what we say over and over and over again, we're each unique. We have different compositions. There are different ways that our bodies respond to things. To stop, listen, ask, listen to your body. Your body is always communicating with you.
We know the idea that joints hurt after eating sugar, and I hear that all the time. Yeah. And with your experience, it's actually the fat that hurts. Mm-hmm. Well, and then there's a subset of Derkham's disease is the name, I think, for painful fat. Actually, like if someone touches you and it hurts, that's not normal. That's another sign I've learned. I met through the years Dr. Herbst,
yes,
who studies the lipedema and lymphedema both, I think.
Yeah, but Derkham's, she's an expert in Derkham's. Derkham's is horrifically painful. And it's like, I think of it sometimes like the mycelium, the mycelium are these very massive networks where fungus and mushrooms grow out of.
Oh, right.
And the earth is filled with it. The body somehow grows fatty tumors. And those fatty tumors is it's Derkham's disease. Incredibly painful. And I know of a number of cases where they were surgically removed. One person had 35 tumors removed, and they all grew back plus more. So it's a mystery. It's a mystery.
And then I did speak once. Does Gunther Klose still have a training program?
Yep, he's you spoke at his conference in Colorado.
In Denver.
Yeah.
And he introduced me to the Foldy Clinic, which, best I can tell, still exists in the Black Forest of Germany. Yeah. But it's expensive to go there and get treated. I don't know many of the details. Do some people require that level of, I think they combine weight loss surgery and plastic surgeries and all sorts of, it sounded pretty intensive, like people stay there for a while.
Yeah, it's like a hospital clinic where people are there specifically for lymphedema or lymphatic disorders. And so they've done research, and some of the research, I was there for 6 months at one point doing research, and it was I learned so much. Uh,
So if someone had all the time and money in the world, they could still contact the Foldy
the
clinic.
Foldy Clinic, yeah, and
FOLDE, I believe it is.
yeah, and Hinterzarten. Hinterzarten is in the Black Forest. It's this tiny little, unbelievable town. It's beautiful.
Yeah, from time to time, I get approached by doctors, surgical doctors at Duke.
Yeah.
There are some new surgical techniques that they claim to be able to do. What's your take on, big picture view of using this scalpel to fix this?
There is surgery that is specific to lipedema, and it's less scalpel and it's more cannula because it's liposuction. And
okay. Cannula meaning a tube.
Yep.
Sucking.
It's a very long, skinny tube with the opening at the tip that sucks the fat out. But it sucks the fat out with, there's something called water jet liposuction. And so it's like a jet of water or fluid that comes out, and then it takes the fluid back, but with the fat tissue. So that's much more common, and they've had some wonderful breakthroughs. Most of those have come, I must say, out of Europe, mostly Germany. Germany is so the Foldy Clinic is in Germany, and doctors Michael and Atelka Foldy were a couple, and they really moved the needle on the lymphatic system. That was their work. There are a couple of others. There's a couple in, I believe, Austria, but it's that part of the world that for some reason is much more knowledgeable about the lymphatic system. And so they...
I had a trip to Europe where I could do side trips, and I remember going to the museum in Vienna, and the medical museum, and so they had the basin of Ignaz Semmelweis. They claim that's where you wash the hands, so you didn't take the infection from the cadaver suite up to the delivery ward, and women would be dying like 30% more. Anyway, just washing the hand was the cure. They didn't know what it was, and germ theory hadn't been developed yet. But at that same museum, there was the most intricate wax model of the lymphatics that I'd never seen anywhere before. Again, it was in Europe. I think they were able to dwell on this and longer, perhaps, than. Well, that leads me to now medical care in the U.S. seems to be medication care. People come to me, their doctors don't talk food, they talk drugs. And now it has the medication world come to study lipedema. Are there medicines that work? Do any of the new GLPs or GIP, GLP combos help,
Yeah, we've been having conversations, and some of the women in the community have gone on Zepbound or Zepbound,
Mounjaro, Ozempic, Saxenda, Wegovy.
Yeah. So, but nobody knows yet. I mean,
no strong. That often I just call that no strong signal from the community. Yeah. Well, that would be a great place for the drug companies now, which apparently have phenomenally wealthy foundations because the drugs have done so well, that would be a great study to look at the weight loss shots in the context of lipedema. That hope that happens soon.
Yeah, just to have some understanding. But
I'm sorry, and then understanding the mechanism of why is it fibrotic and scarring and maybe there's a drug target that could happen there. So no community signal of I went on this and it fixed it. I mean, I've seen that in several situations where a rare disease of glycogen storage problems of people actually change what they eat to fat burners, and then suddenly everything is fixed. I don't even a keto diet with lipedema. It's helpful and it's a great tool. I don't know that it like miraculously fixes it though, and but it is helpful, right?
It is. It is. I like that you called it a tool. I really believe it's a tool, but you need a toolkit because there are different things that work at different times.
Yeah.
And I think at different stages, one of the biggest issues, at least that I've discovered in myself personally, as well as I've seen and worked with many, many other women, is post-menopause is a bit of a disaster. I mean, you're in
hormonal change, right? Period of hormonal change.
Yeah. And while perimenopause, which can go on for years, can be very challenging, the actual postmenopausal phase, it gets to be, that for whatever reason, the volume can increase no matter what you're doing. Even keto doesn't work at that point. Not for everybody. See, that's the thing. We're so different. So sometimes it works for some. Same thing with the GLP-1s. It's worked for some people in the community because we get reports. Like I just saw a friend of mine who lives on the West Coast. She was posting on Facebook, I think, and she's been on Zepbound for 4 or 5 months, and she's lost over 35 pounds. She looks fabulous, and she's happy. If it would work, I would do it, but it doesn't work for everyone.
Well, and in the trenches that I am at Duke in a weight loss clinic, some of these shots are so strong, people don't want to eat at all.
Yeah.
So I see some people coming in just kind of starving, and we don't think that's the healthiest way to do it. There should be some protein every day, but I think the shots are helping a lot of people. But if it's not working, remember the diet still can work.
Yeah.
I wanted to address also the idea that lipedema can run in families.
Yeah.
People come in and they suddenly get the word, and they think, oh yeah, my aunt or my someone in the ancestry had her legs look just like that. How common is it to run in families?
It's very common. Heredity is one of its foundational causes. And what's very interesting is that it is mostly women. And so you can remember, it could be your mother, it could be your aunt, it could be your grandmother. I have a photo of 3 generations, and you see their legs side by side, and you can see them. But men can be carriers. So while it may not show up in a man, his mother might have it, and he carries it to his daughter genetically. And so they've done some work on the genetics of it. There's a group in the UK that's working on identifying it. And Dr. Stan Roxon has been doing some work as well, looking at the genetics and being able to identify what might be some kind of commonality. It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Oh, it's fascinating, though.
And then as kind of a preventive, let's say you're a parent and you start seeing the leg growth or puberty or the asymmetric distribution of fat on them. Has anyone addressed what to do then? My toggle default, of course, would be cut the carbs, cut the simple sugars and all, but is anyone addressing that?
Just what you said. It's like, there are a number of women in the community whose daughters are reaching puberty, and they're like, one woman spoke to me about it recently, and, she went to the pediatrician, and, she's terrified. She doesn't want to see her daughter go through what she's had to go through. So, but, how do you sit down with a 13-year-old and tell her that, she shouldn't be eating any sweets and she should stay away from bread and pasta and rice and pizza, and, it's complex, though it's what seems to make a difference, even in the early stages. And I know you asked a good question, Dr. Westman, because the progression, so there are 3 stages, and so there's the stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3 has moderate and severe. And if you go the full spectrum, severe is fat that overlaps on itself and prevents motion and mobility, and is horrifically, that you said, that sense of heaviness. And there's the misguidance of it being a cosmetic issue, where it is absolutely not cosmetic, though it includes cosmetic because it's how we look. And, there is disfigurement, and there's no way around it. And for women, that's part of the research that I've done in my work, has been looking at, society's judgment of women. A research study that I did was stunning to me because, I see myself and many in the community that I work with, with lipedema, lymphedema, different, disfiguring elements. But then the women that I had in my study were thin, and by all standards would be considered beautiful. And yet they also had those deep levels of dissatisfaction with themselves and their bodies. So there's just a cultural, I'm sure you see it as in obesity medicine, where someone comes in and you go, really? You want to lose weight? You look gorgeous. I mean, but, it is such an internalized dilemma.
Yeah.
Kind of fascinating, though.
Yeah. Well, so how can people find you and what are you involved in these days?
So we host an event a couple of times a year that's a deep dive into all of this. So we have a 3-day event coming up. By the time this is on YouTube or wherever it's going, it may already be over, but September 27, 28, and 29. And meet Cara Mia. She wants to be seen right now. My cat, she's here.
I think we'll get a lot more views with a cat in the video, I'm told.
Yeah. Yeah, she's my sweetheart. Anyway, so we have that coming up in the next couple of weeks. But I think...
Where will that be?
It's the virtual. So people can find out about us through lipedema-simplified.org. And there's all kinds of information. But I'll tell you the thing that is, I share this because I know you're prolific. You've written so many books. But we've been invited to write a book on lipedema. So I'm one of 3 editors with Leslin and Dr. Roxon from Stanford. So the 3 of us are in the midst, and it's coming out. We just met with the publisher, and it's coming out in June. So of 2025. So so we're working experts around the globe and they're contributing chapters.
So I think Leslyn Keith did a couple books on lymphedema, and those will be expanding, I'm sure, upon this. But I really like her books as a starting point for a lot of information and actionable items. And awesome. Do you still have a community of followers as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have a community, and we have workshops and seminars and webinars, and mostly everything we do is online. One of the things that I think it was just the way it happened. Our first conference was planned in North Carolina, as it was in your neighborhood, and then the pandemic happened, and so we had to make a decision. So we decided to go virtual. My cat's kissing me.
Yeah.
He's so sweet. So we decided to go virtual, and what we found is we were able to have women join us from all around the world. So we have community members in New Zealand and Australia and all through Europe and England and South Africa and South America. I mean, the lipedema is everywhere.
How do people find that? What's the name of that group, and what platform is it on?
Lipedema-simplified.org will give you all the information.
Okay, fantastic.
And it's wonderful. I find that community, and I find this with keto too, though. It's through community that I learn. It's through community that I answer questions, and I support others. It's just wonderful. And your academy, I know, has wonderful interaction.
Yeah, it's so helpful, and to get you off of that feeling that you're the only one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the good side of the internet. There's a lot of bad side of the internet too. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk today. And I wish you all the best, and thanks for your pioneering effort in lipedema. I've come to the conclusion that time just goes by fast.
Yeah.
Cherish every moment with your cat right next to you.
Yeah, I know. Shit, that was so sweet. I'm like, I can't control it when she decides she wants to come. She's skittish, and she comes on her own timing. But it's really sweet.
I hope to see you soon in person.
Yeah, that would be lovely. Thank you, Dr. Westman. I so appreciate you and your work.
Bye-bye. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and check out adaptyourlifeacademy.com.